Welcome back to Afternoon Live. We all have family roles that we play, whether we like it or not, and during the holidays, these roles can take on even more meaning. Here to share how archetypes shape our lives, we welcome mythologist Allison Stieger. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me come on.
So tell me a little bit about this idea of archetypes, and can you kind of walk us through some of the main examples?
Of course. Well, archetypes are a word that we use to describe very typical types of ways to be a human being. So we might think about a mother archetype. Everybody knows what a mother is, whether you had a really good mother, or a really bad mother, anywhere in between. We all kind of recognize that that's a different thing from a father or a king or a child even. So by recognizing that we kind of have these patterns of being human, we can understand each other a little bit more.
Are most of us walking around not realizing maybe we fall into a certain category, and can it help us to kind of lean into that a little bit?
Well, absolutely. I do believe that archetypes they're a thing that holds a lot of energy for human interaction, right? So sometimes it can be a little bit easier to see each other as archetypes than it is to actually see the changeable and maybe vulnerable person that's on the inside of that.
Sure.
So it's very easy when we get around our families to fall into old patterns of how you might be perceived. Maybe if you feel like you're 8 years old every time you see your mother again, maybe you're a child archetype for a little while when you're with her, and understanding that can be really useful.
Is that a common experience? I think a lot of us tend to do that. We see our family, we get together, especially over the holidays, and kind of similar patterns form, and you might feel like you're stuck in that pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. We do get stuck in these patterns all the time, and what can be really useful about recognizing the archetypes that we're holding for each other is sometimes we can say, you know what, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not going to hold that for you anymore. Or maybe you can say, yeah, actually, I'm okay with that. I'm your mother, you're 17, you need to push against the mother archetype because you have to grow up. So sometimes if you can recognize the archetype that you're holding for somebody else, you can get a little bit closer to figuring out how to interact with each other a little bit better.
That's great perspective. Can you share some of the main ones with us that folks might kind of recognize in themselves, like a caregiver? What's that one all about?
So I would say like the caregiver or the caretaker, I guess both kind of meaning the same thing, is, you know, it comes up a lot in the holidays because the holidays can be a lot of work, right? There's a lot of effort that goes into making a holiday special for a family, and sometimes we can both be trapped in, I am the caregiver and I'm going to take care of everything, and sometimes we're kind of not accessing our own caregiver and we're letting everybody else do all the work. And this is something that families have to navigate because we need to change how we hold that for each other as time goes on. So when children are small, they need caregiving, but when they're 25 years old, they might not need that, and maybe they can go and help with the dishes at the end of the meal.
Yes, they can. What about the rebel? That's a really interesting one.
Well, the rebel is such an interesting archetype because what it often does is it will push against the ways in which these things can get kind of solidified over time, right? So if you're a rebel, you might be saying, no, we don't need to live in that archetype anymore. I'm going to use this archetype to change archetypes so that we can all be closer and be better and interact with each other better.
Okay, and then what about the hero?
The hero, that's a great one because it really does imply a lot of courage to make changes, right? So we go through our lives, sometimes we need to pull that heroic energy toward ourselves so that we can go on and do the things that might be a little bit scary for us to change our lives for the better.
Are there another one that I'm missing? I'm thinking hero, rebel, caregiver.
Well, and it can be anything. Like, a king is different from a queen. You know, any noun really that can describe a way a human being can be an archetype. So if none of these archetypes really resonate for you, maybe go and think about other ones and how they might be holding space in your family and in your own personality.
And so as you're describing this, can you kind of interact with different people in your life in different ways and be a different archetype depending on who you're in front of in that moment?
Well, of course, because we're all characters in each other's stories, and other people are characters in our stories. So when we recognize that maybe we're being seen in that way, we can either provide the support that that person needs in that moment, or we can say, you know what, I need you to really see me on the inside and not just react to me as if I was an archetype.
Can it be hard for the loved ones around you if you feel like you're wanting to make a shift in a different direction and they're going, wait, my perception of you is totally different. How am I going to adjust to all of this?
Well, and that's the great thing about actually starting to engage with this sort of work, because what you get to do is you get to approach it with a little bit of compassion, a little bit of empathy, and if you can recognize what psychological needs are being met by your family members seeing you as that archetype, it allows you to have a little bit of compassion for where they're coming from, and hopefully a little bit of a sense of humor as well.
Well, and then going into maybe a holiday gathering, can you kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, I kind of know what I'm going to be dealing with here, right? If I can recognize these roles that my family members play, and then I'm going to decide how I'm going to best cope in that scenario.
Yeah, and it certainly does allow you to give yourself some distance from it. So if you know that you're going to be treated like a child, maybe you can just see that that's not me, that that's something that exists outside of me, and I can actually just, you know, start to have that conversation with my parent that's treating me that way in order to make things change. But it gives you a sense of distance from it, so it doesn't become so personal and hurtful to you.
Is that kind of a common difficult transition, that kind of teen to young adult phase of somebody having a different relationship with a parental figure and going, wait a minute, I'm going to outgrow that. You have to accept that about me too.
Right, and that's where that rebel archetype comes in, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to push against this a little bit, and it's going to be a difficult transition for us as a family, but we're all going to be better and closer at the end of it.
Very fascinating. Hey, thank you so much for being
welcome.
here. Really appreciate your time. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. You too.
We will have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.